Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this event in the Spanish Pavilion, organised by Spain. Really looking forward to this event because we're going to have a dialogue between women and youth leaders, both in the UN climate process and also in the climate movement outside of this process. Everybody on the panel has experience, I think, of both inside the UN climate talks and also outside. And we're going to compare a little bit how things have changed in here, and then also look at what's been happening on the streets, what's been happening outside. Okay, I think that's a bit better. And then look at how things have evolved and whether there is really a bigger place, a larger voice, a stronger influence for women and young people over this process, as well as how what's happening on the outside feeds into this process. And in order to hold this dialogue, the idea is to have people from different generations, people who have experience. The UNFCCC is, I think it's 30 years old now. We're at COP27 because obviously we didn't have one during the pandemic. And also we would like to sort of compare that experience in the room with how young people feel about what they're achieving and whether really what they're achieving on the streets is reflected here and how they feel the two things can be connected. There is, a mixed sense perhaps among young people. Some people feel very frustrated about the slow progress of COPs. And so, in a way, that's been seen in the youth movement, how it exploded. And at the same time, there is this kind of interconnection between the two. So without the young people on the street, maybe we wouldn't have had the progress that we've had in these COPs. And without the COPs, without the Paris Agreement, where would we be in terms of unfettered use of fossil fuels and rising emissions? So we're not going to have any presentations or speeches. I'm going to ask some questions to our guests, and we're going to throw some ideas backwards and forwards and hopefully get some interesting insights and perhaps some fresh views and ideas about where we can go from here as well. So I'm just going to introduce the panel first, and then we'll start the discussion. So here on my left, I have Lara Padilla, who is an independent expert in the Spanish Citizen Assembly for Climate, which I think has wrapped up its work now, or at least you've come out with the recommendations, haven't you? And I think you also work with a youth group of UNICEF in Spain, right? We are supposed to have Nisreen El Saim from... She is here? Oh, hello, hi, sorry, I didn't see you arriving there. Nisreen is chair of the UN Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, and she's also chair of the Sudan Youth Organization on Climate Change. Glad you could make it. Here we have Pablo Morente, who is the only non-woman on the panel. He's the climate action lead for the National Youth Council of Spain, which is a group of youth organizations in Spain. Next to Pablo, we have Nicole Becker, the co-founder of Youth for Climate in Argentina. Am I right in thinking that's part of Fridays for Future? Okay, great. Nice to have you here. Next to Nicole, we have Mary Robinson. I think everybody knows Mary. She was the first woman president of Ireland, the former UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and is also chair of the Elders. And probably needs no further introduction. Next to Mary, we have Maria Neira, who is the Director for Public Health and Environment at the World Health Organization, who's done really a lot of work in making the connections between climate and its impact on health. We are supposed to have Barbara Pompili, a French politician who was the former Minister of the Ecological Transition. I'm not sure if Barbara will be coming in a little bit. And finally, last but definitely not least, we have Teresa Ribera, Deputy Prime Minister of Spain for the ecological transition, who also played a huge role in the Madrid climate talks in 2019. Hi, Barbara. Hello. Nice to have you with us. Hello. Hi. So I think we have everybody. Maria has to leave a little early, and so does Nicole. They're just going to exit when they need to. Hi, Nisreen. Take a seat. Thanks. Right. So I thought we would start by talking about people's experiences here. Mary, you've obviously been coming to these COPs for a long time, and I think it would be really interesting to hear your views on how women's representation, women's leadership and participation has changed and how it's made a difference in these halls.
Actually, I haven't been coming to COP for as long as some people. My first COP was Copenhagen in 2009. I had been High Commissioner for 5 years, and I had never connected climate and human rights. There was another part of the UN dealing with climate. I knew it was serious, but I thought it was, a scientific world. And then I started working in African countries, and I quickly realized, that climate was affecting them then. So I came to COP, saying, we've got to do something about this. And I came into this male, technical, scientific world where nobody was talking about people, nobody was talking about climate justice, nobody was talking about human rights. I went, and there was a women's constituency, a women and gender constituency that was trying hard to get heard and wasn't being heard. And then luckily the following COP with Patricia Espinosa as foreign minister and president of it in Mexico, we formed a women leaders network on gender and climate. And that began to create some waves. We got a new decision a few COPs later in Doha on parity in the COP. And then we realized that one of the important things was to get the other voices, frontline expert voices, those affected by the climate issues, into the proper delegates zone. They were out in the civil society space and weren't being heard. So we arranged that a number of these women, because the members of this, they were mainly ministers for environment, for energy, some foreign ministers. Amina Mohammed was a member. Helen Clark as head of UNDP, etc. So the ministers were asked to include grassroots women, young women, indigenous women in their delegation. And I can tell you, when these women spoke up in the room itself where they were negotiating and spoke up about the reality of their lives, everybody, the negotiators sort of put the pen down and listened and heard, these very, very impactful stories. And to me, that was really important. And then we got the Gender Action Plan, and I'm actually very annoyed that the Gender Action Plan is a bit stuck at the moment in this COP. I'll stop there.
Yes, well, it's a long battle, right? And I think the main thing that I'm hearing from Mary is that if you don't keep fighting year after year after year after year, there's a potential for backsliding. But a huge amount of progress has been made. I remember that Doha decision and writing about it actually at the time. And it does feel as if, things have changed, although we're maybe not where we need to be. I think in terms of the number of delegates, it's sort of getting close to 50-50. But when it comes to heads of delegations, there are still many more men. And also, I think only a third of women on the constituency bodies as well, according to a study last year from UNFCCC. But, if we keep going like Mary has done over the years, then I think clearly it does make a difference. And we do see a lot more young people and women sort of inside these halls. And Nisreen, I wanted to ask you, you work on the Secretary General's youth group. How does it feel to you when you come here and you need to get your point across? Do you feel that there are good enough channels for you to be able to do that as a young woman?
First of all, good evening, everyone. I just want to make a small exercise for intergenerational engagement. And this exercise will mean that we have to change how we are seated. Mary, would you please come and sit my place?
I like it, Nishran. You're always upsetting things. Good for you.
Sorry for the organizers, but we need to do it now. I mean, it's time for change, and if we didn't do it now, then it will not happen.
Okay.
Can you please come here in her place?
No, I'm young. What do you
This is unplanned, by the way. I had no idea we were going to be doing this.
Definitely.
Discrimination, no way.
And maybe? Now I can talk about youth engagement. Yes, so this is exactly what we are doing as part of the Youth Advisory Group. We shake the panels a little bit in order to say we have now intergenerational inequality when it comes to specifically to climate change, because our generation was not the generation responsible for crisis.
We definitely need Nisreen to have a voice.
Yeah. But we are the generation who are actually requested to solve all of the problems, and they normally ask us to solve the problems without giving us resources, tools, or even spaces to speak up. And we are actually saying that it's very important for all of us to work together, because without the experience that the previous generation had, without the knowledge that they actually experienced in their life, without the innovations that we are bringing and the energy that we are bringing, things will not go. And this is exactly what we are doing now, mixing both together, the experience plus the energy, and without neglecting that young people have also professional knowledge that they want to actually do or implement. A lot of us are negotiators for many years. This is my 8th COP. I attended 7 before, and I've been doing climate change for 10 years now. So if you think I'm young, you need to reconsider that. I know I look younger, but it's not the case. So I think also one of the, and my last point here is that when we talk about intergenerational equality, when we talk about how much we can be engaged together, we have to know that it's a mutual learning process. So the the senior population should be able to also be open to learn as much as we are open to learn from them. And it's two-way process where we both give and take at the same time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for changing the shape of the panel as well. Maria, I'm going to bring you in now because you're not going to be with us for too much longer. I mean, you've done a huge job in terms of advocating for the rights of women within this climate space and for the health of women and girls. And I just wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about how you feel that the change of perceptions around that. Do you feel like there's a much better understanding in this process now of the impacts of climate change on women and young people?
Thank you, and hola a todos. Happy to be in the Spanish pavilion. Thanks for inviting me. I'm Spanish, so I have to, express that. Regarding where we started, definitely we improve a lot, but we started from zero, so it's easy to say we have improved. The first COPs I attended ages ago, health was simply not mentioned, not included. Teresa Rivera was attending those COP, and she was very receptive to the message, and we started there. But our campaign has been make sure that everybody understands that health and climate change are so much connected. Because we are convinced that the moment people will understand the connection between our human health and climate change, maybe the dialogue, the ambition, the speed of taking action will change completely. At the moment, looking at the magnitude of the problem and the reaction, no proportion at all. It's ridiculous. That's why we took the lungs to our pavilion. I don't know whether you saw the fantastic sculpture in the health pavilion of the World Health Organization representing our lungs. And the reason is because we are already, the price of climate change is already paid by our lungs and the rest of our body. Mary Robinson was talking about when women start to talk. Asthma has been an incredible word that helped us a lot to move this agenda, asthma, because people connect very easily asthma with air pollution. And for us, the drivers of climate change and the drivers of air pollution overlap, combustion of fossil fuel. So we need to stop our addiction to the fossil fuels if we want our health to be protected and improved. So I've been trained as a physician, as a medical doctor. You know, we are very pragmatic. You have the patient, you do a diagnosis, you see what is the problem, and then you propose a treatment. We know what are the symptoms, we know the diagnosis. The question is now the treatment is proposed as well. Stop combustion of fossil fuels, accelerate this transition to renewable, to sources of energy that will not kill us, stop giving subsidies to fossil fuels, look at the bill that our hospitals, our global health is already paying, look at the patients that are now having chronic diseases, and look at the positive aspect. If you tackle the causes of climate change and pollution, the benefits for our health will be enormous. So that's our message.
Absolutely, and that's a message that's important to a lot of women, I think, as well as young people when they're thinking about their futures and also for future generations, that connection between health and climate change is, properly understood here, and it's not just about tons of carbon emissions and reducing those emissions, which tends to be a man's world, actually. Pablo, could you talk to us a little bit about how you have brought some of the concerns of youth into this process? And do you feel that you're listened to more now than when you first started to do this?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, I'm super glad to be in this super empowered desk. Also, I think this a change. This desk or this panel now with all these super empowered women, that is a change. I was in Madrid COP, in 25 COP in Madrid. There was the first COP that civil society was included, but we doesn't know where we have to go, where we have to talk. And this is the first COP that the government of Spain include youth people in their delegation. That's, I think, super important. And also because the combination, because we have a very expert working in the ministry, and now we are the youth with our empowered background, and also because I think youth people include in the agenda that is a global challenge, and we have to go more faster. So I think the combination of our view and the technical view is the perfect combination in a COP. So I hope to next COP to study more harder, to be also in the delegation, and possibly can be in the negotiation desk with the government of Spain, defining the common interest.
Thanks. Teresa, how does it work with the Spanish delegation here and the youth? And how do you sort of interact with the youth delegates here? Because I think, for some countries are more open to this kind of interaction with the young people of their country who are here than others. And I think Spain, I heard Spain is good at listening. So, so if you could tell us a little bit about that. And then also, how did you feel as one of the co-leaders of the Madrid COP with Carolina from Chile, the minister? You two both did an amazing job, and it always encourages me when we have women leading the COP process. So if you could reflect a little bit on those two questions.
Okay, thank you, Megan, for the question. And I was paying attention to all the comments that were made, and feeling like making an additional comment on what we have already heard. Because to me, the main change we have been experienced along the years is that, as Mary said, this is not anymore a meeting for meteorologists, scientists, and diplomats. Because climate change is not a technology scientific issue. or diplomatic issue. Of course, it is all of that, but it is more than that. It is a societal challenge. I think that when we say that it is a civilization paradigm change, it's true. So it is very important that the dialogue and the conversations take place in the streets and take place in the discussions on how to make the big changes that we need to promote. It's a question of how we change our mindset and the cultural values, so to think prosperity in a different manner. And the very important thing when thinking how we can facilitate other means of conversation, of discussion with people, is that we should not accept that the youth is to be in the streets protesting and contesting, and the adults in the room taking decisions. This is a bit stupid, because probably the adults are taking decisions that are not grounded on the street, and the youth is not to be blamed for not being responsible in the decisions. You cannot introduce the big charge of making the big changes when you are 15 or when you are 20 years, but there is a strong need to have this dialogue and this conversation, because things are perceived in a different manner, and it's like a better understood and better based decision process making. And I think that this is very important. I think that the society has been participated along the COPs in different manners, but we experience to what extent the dialogue has improved. First thing. Second thing, I think that the Spanish young people has been participating in different contexts, but it was a bit shocking to identify that they were participating with a badge coming from an NGO, a badge coming from an observer because they were being part of a research program in an university, or they were participating as, I don't know, young members who knew someone from the COP. This doesn't make sense either. So what we thought was that it was important to have a kind of official representation of young and open ways to recover young researchers within the delegation. So there are different very talented young people being part of the delegation that represent different manners of understanding the problems and facing the response to these problems. And I think that this is very important also, because you were saying at the introductory comments, this is not a question on how we can institutionalize some processes, and again coming back to the streets. I think it is very important to know that the institutional process, that sometimes is a headache, terrible headache, because it is very important to agree when we are 189 countries with different backgrounds and different expectations, but it is very important that the process go on. But if goes on and goes quicker, right? It's not only goes on, it has to be effective. But this is like a strange thing happening somewhere else. So being part of the idea, the meeting, also allows to understand and to be pushing for more, but also understanding where the difficulties may be. Otherwise, it's quite frustrating. You are somewhere else in the world and you say, what are these people doing in that strange meeting that does not serve for any purpose? No, it serves for purpose, and there are difficulties there. So I think that it is also an issue of transparency and a way to learn how to build better the climate response, the response to the climate change.
Absolutely, and it sometimes feels like these COPs are taking place on a planet, I don't know where, you know, and I'm a journalist. I work for the charitable part of Reuters, and, you know, it's our job to try and translate what's happening at these COPs into articles that people in the wider world can read and then act on as well. So, you know, I think we do try and play a role in doing that. And, you know, the first time you look at a COP text, you literally have no clue what it's talking about. It takes a long time to understand and then be able to read the text and understand, you know, what's really going on. And Nicole, I mean, do you feel that, you know, when you're taking action on the streets, in your country, do you feel that there is this stronger connection now between, what Fridays for Future's doing and what the negotiators are doing here? I mean, Greta decided, for example, not to come this year because she seemed like she's a bit fed up with the process, although she's obviously had a huge influence here before, and maybe it's time for other young people who still feel more enthusiastic. I mean, what's your feeling? Do you feel that there's any kind of connection between the two things?
Yeah, I live in Argentina, and most of the people that I know feel that every decision that or the results of this COP doesn't have any connection with our reality. For example, now we are living a historical threat in Argentina, and of course, every comma that are made at this COP impact then in our public politics. But it's difficult to make the connection because sometimes the people don't even understand what the COP is. So also part of what the young people, or at least what EU for Climate and Friday for Future in general, are trying to do here, and part of what is our role, is also to communicate the climate crisis in a better way, in an easy way, and also what the COP is and what is the connection with our countries, with the consequences of the climate crisis that we are having now, because some people think that the climate crisis is something that is going to happen in the future, but it's not. It's something that is impacting now, and for example, we can't talk about climate justice if we don't talk about climate finance. And we can't talk about climate justice if we don't talk about loss and damages. So making this connection and trying to explain in a better way, and in a way that young people learn now, that is from social media. For example, I'm a climate activist because I saw a video on social media about the climate crisis, and that touched my heart. So trying to do the same show, I think it's really, really important, and trying to make this connection so the people also know what are their rights, because if they don't know what is being discussed here, they don't know what to demand to their governments.
Absolutely, and I'm going to bring in the last two speakers on the panel who haven't spoken yet, because I think when people do find out about the issues, when they do have education and they're able to have information at their fingertips, then it does change people's perceptions also of how they want to live their lives. And I think that's something that's been seen in the UK with the Citizens' Assembly on climate change. France also has gone through this process, and so has Spain. So I just wanted to ask, starting with Barbara, how do you feel that the Citizens' Assembly process in France has changed both the policy at the national level, and does it feel like you're bringing the French people's expectations and hopes and aspirations into this process? Is it possible, or does it remain on the outside as wishful thinking?
Yes, this citizen convention was very important for me, because it's the first time I realized that people who doesn't care about this environmental issue, because they have their own lives, they have their own problems, and they are not as involved as us, which are militant, which are when they are in a room with a member of the IPCC, one day, when they go out the room, they are more militant than us, and their proposals were very ambitious, and they were very convinced and wanted to move faster than us. And that's the first thing I remember from this citizen convention. But at the moment where they met this member of the IPCC, it was Valérie Masson-Delmotte. She's wonderful, and we need her everywhere. At this moment, they were not average citizens anymore, and there was a gap between them and the average people, and this is a real problem, because how can we do to make all the citizens, all the fellow citizens understand what they did understand after this day with Valérie Masson-Delmotte. It's very complicated because we all have the information. There are movie programs, there are studies, surveys, there are so many people talk about it. But we have one part of the population which consider that it's not its problem. And another part very involved, and I see young people here who want us to move faster. And when we have responsibility, it's challenging because we have to manage with those two opposites. And we need to find the right balance to move as fast as possible because we know that climate change doesn't wait for us. But if we don't have everybody on board, it's not possible to move. I remember the yellow jacket movement. It was terrible because it was based on a good measure. It was a carbon tax. And carbon tax, we know that we need to implement a carbon tax. But these people didn't understand why they have to pay for that without nothing in return. Yeah. And this moment was a moment of truth for us. Yeah. And for me, it was a call for action, how to gather us and make the other one understand that they have to be with us. And if we want them to be with us, we have to move to us. We have to find a way to speak to them, to reassure them, to make them understand that tackle climate change is not only our burden, but it's also an opportunity for them to have a better life. Yeah. And when we talked about health and pollution or climate issue, I face it in my country because we are in the law, we decided to implement zone à faible émission, my God. À faible émission, tu sais, low emissions areas. So many people come to me and tell me, oh no, it's not possible, people need their car, it is terrible, it is socially terrible. And it's very difficult to make them understand, with that you will have a better life, your children will breathe, only breathe. And I think this message we need to build and deliver. Yeah. And this is the most difficult because here everybody is convinced. We have to go out and to tell this story.
Absolutely, and it's how do you get the message beyond the echo chamber of COPs. And also I think there's a huge element of fairness, right, which was a problem in France when people didn't think what was happening was fair to them, and especially now that we have the energy price crisis and food price crisis, and Spain's been trying to ease the pain of energy bills for people, but you know this is really not very easy. But I also think that you can educate people and tell them why they should be doing something, but if they don't have the tools to be able to make changes in their daily life, it can just leave people feeling very frustrated and anxious, and actually at the same time as telling them about climate change, we have to give people the means to be able to kind of do something about it, which a lot of people I think feel blocked in their daily lives. Lara, how was your experience of working with the Spanish Citizens Climate Assembly, and do you feel that young Spanish people have a good understanding of climate issues, and how do you sort of go about helping to spread the word?
Working in the Spanish Citizen Assembly has been a complete honor, first of all. I mean, with 20 years old, being part of the group of experts has been, a part of a complete honor, also a moment of reassurance in the importance of giving key, accessible, direct information to every citizen. I mean, people that at first didn't think or didn't consider the climate crisis as a present problem, when they received
this accessible information understandable for every individual, they really make the change. And they started to propose things, and well, we are now with proposing, and the citizens are really active right now. Also, I have been reassured in the fact that society is able to unite and make a sense of union when they truly believe in something. So that's why I think that spaces like COPs, like the Spanish Citizen Assembly, are really important to involve every citizen in decision-making processes, because yes, we can make policies for the people, but if we don't make it with them, we are not arriving to every vulnerable spaces that do not, or make or find it difficult maybe to have a voice and to be listened to. When we had the last session that was face to face in the assembly, young people came to me and told me their experience also, and told me that they were like they felt really heard, and they were proud about the job that they have been doing all these months. And we just want to reivindicate our right as citizens, because young people and children are considered like another part of society, and we want to be in those spaces so we can make the difference and have an impact in our future.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say you've already, as a group, made a huge difference, especially in the last few years. I mean, I don't know, it's hard to know where would this process be if there hadn't been the huge youth mobilizations on the streets and, everything that's been happening, the school student strikes and so on. And I think, within that, something that's been really encouraging, I think, has been to see how many young women have kind of been taking the leadership roles in that movement. And obviously there are a lot of young men doing it too. But it just seems to me that it is different from the old model. And Nicole, I'm just wondering, do you have any thoughts on why that is? Is it easy? Is it easy to, as young women, to be leading the youth movement, or do you also have challenges?
No, of course we have challenges, but I think it's curious because, for example, my first strike was on an International Women's Day when I was 8 years old, and I went with my mom because I was so little. So, and I think this is the experience of a lot of young women that are part of the climate movement right now. We start with feminism in general. We understand that we don't have the same rights as men. And then seeing the world with that perspective, at least it helped me to understand better what the climate crisis is and the inequalities that the climate crisis had. So I think maybe it's because we grow up with the feminism in general, and we grow up understanding that the only way to solve a problem, a structural problem, is going to the streets, is with collective action. And at least it helped me understand that the only way, or at least what I think, the only way to stop the climate crisis is with collective action and working with all the sector and other young people.
Absolutely. Nisreen, how is it for you, working in Sudan maybe it's a different political environment? Do you have difficulties operating, or, is there a strong collective movement in Sudan on climate change?
First, thank you to my microphone woman here. She kept moving the microphone. Yes, so working in Sudan is hard, of course, especially that there is a general rights problem. So I'm not only talking about climate change, I'm talking about the different freedoms of speech, of gathering, etc., etc. Last year in Glasgow, I gave a speech with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson and other prime ministers and head of states, and I couldn't go back home for a while. Yes, I got stuck in London for a while. But what makes us continue the fight, that I believe, and I think a lot of people believe, that climate justice and social justice are two faces for one coin. And we cannot actually have climate justice without having social justice. I spoke before about climate governance and how the impact of having no governance can actually impact the climate governance. It's our governments that makes the NAPs, for example, and I mean by the NAPs, the National Action Plans. It's our government that applies for climate funds. It's our government that actually reach to the vulnerable communities and assist how much need they want, how much help, and how to do it. And if we don't have this structure of systems, governments, institutes that enable that, it will be very much hard. Currently in Sudan, the civil society is doing everything, but yet being a civil society activist means that you are a target. You are a target for a lot of other abuses. A lot of times also it's been very hard because as a climate change advocate and Sudanese at the same time, I felt like fighting two losing fights or losing battles. We are not making a lot of progress here in the climate change field and also back there in Sudan. Yet we, as I say always, we don't have the luxury or the privilege of losing hope. What else we can do if we could not keep fighting? I mean, I cannot afford to go to the Bahamas and wait for the world to end. I mean, we have to stay here and keep fighting. The second thing is, I think what we lived, the next generation should not live. They should have the time to enjoy life, learn more as they are growing, and party a little bit, because I am very much sure that most of us don't have time to party. And we should. This is the time where we do it. I mean, like, when, if not now? We spend the time where we should explore and learn and turn around the world to meet other people, to know other cultures, in fighting for things that it should be by default our rights. Again, we don't have the privilege to stop or losing hope, and that's what keeps us continue the fight.
Absolutely. Well, I think you're courageous, and those efforts are definitely paying off. But like you say, it's not possible for everybody to do that. So I think the efforts of everybody here are hugely appreciated, and it's a big sacrifice, right? And Mary, you've spent a lot of your life as well, sort of, working on these issues, and I think it's fair to say that this coming together of climate justice and social justice has not been an easy thing to do, but I think conceptually now that's pretty well established, right? I mean, now when you talk about climate justice, pretty much everybody knows what that means. And that's been a fight for you, right? And do you feel that battle is kind of being won, even though it's not reflected yet in policy? At least it's better understood.
I'm very encouraged by the way young climate activists speak from the perspective of, as Nisreen has said, climate justice, social justice, gender justice, racial justice. It's all connected. And I think we are seeing a very unequal world with a broken international financial system. The multilateral development banks badly need reform. Who's championing that? 3 women. Mia Mottley, with her Bridgetown Initiative, etc. Janet Yellen in the Fed, Kristalina Georgieva in the IMF. I mean, we are seeing some good women's leadership at high level, but it was pretty shocking to come to this COP and see that photograph of the first day with the 90+ heads of state or government, and you literally had to look and see if you could find a few women's faces, and this is the 21st century. So actually, if I may take a second you said we were going to talk about outside the COP as well as inside. A number of us women leaders have realized we're in a very urgent moment. We know it. And we need the feminist equivalent of the moonshot. That, John F. Kennedy said, we must put a man on the moon. It was impossible, and it was done in 8 years. What we're saying is we have 7 years from January to 2030. We have to reduce by 45% greenhouse gas emissions. We have to restore biodiversity. We have to regenerate. We have to change the whole financial system. It's impossible, but we have to get it done. So what we're trying to do is have a very positive narrative. We're taking it from an indigenous member of our group, Jade Bigo. She's here. She's actually running the Indigenous Pavilion. And Jade put the question that they asked themselves in a tribe in New Mexico. What if our best times are still ahead of us? And they are. But so are our worst times, and that's where we're heading. Our best times are ahead of us. We know it. Young people know it. We just have to get over the hump into the clean energy, clean jobs, nature-based solutions, everything. And a lot of people in this COP are talking about it, but we're prevented by especially the failure of governments to do their bit in reducing emissions and the failure of investment. Imagine spending 1.8 trillion a year on what's harming us. Subsidies to fossil fuel. I mean, it's absurd. So we're skewed at the moment. We're going in the wrong direction, but it's in our hands. Our best times are still ahead of us if we make sure they are. So we're going to have a women-led movement to join with young climate activists, to join with progressive private sector, to join with and put the pressure where it needs to be. And the elders are endorsing this, I'm glad to say. And we're calling it Project Dandelion. I'll just take 1 second on that. Project Dandelion. The dandelion flower or weed is the only flower that flowers on all 7 continents. It's very resilient, as anybody would, if they try to get rid of it, which most people do. Poets write about it, etc., and you spread it. So we want to be light touch, positive narrative. Our best times are there, and we're going to get there because we're going to have a movement that really is women-led, but not women only. Women-led into, and women-led importantly, because women step up when things are desperate. We know that in every context. When things are bad enough, women step up. They're bad enough, so women step up, please. That's it.
Sorry, that has to be applauded. Well, looking forward to hopefully being part of that, because I think women journalists also feel strongly, or the ones that I know anyway, about these issues, and so we also try to play our part while also, of course, being as neutral as we can at the same time. But yeah, I mean, just to go back to Teresa and Barbara, I mean, you work in government and you know how hard it is to do all the things that Mary's talking about that we know that we have to do, but how do we get over that hump when you have to, follow the protocols of ministries and political processes? And do you have any good tips about how we can just kind of shortcut some of this stuff and just get it done, like Mary's saying?
Well, Mary, you didn't say, but Mary was in government too, eh?
Yes, this is true.
And she made great things in government. I think that it is very important to have a very strong and committed leadership on these issues, because I was commenting before the main difficulty is the change in values and priorities, or the mindsets. The human factor in all this discussion is much more difficult to change than the understanding of the science or the technology solutions or whatever. So it is very important to be powerful in terms of the public support, but also in terms of the commitment and engagement to change. Once say that, I always think that it is very important to understand, so to be very bold on explanations and to count on citizens that understand why it is worth it to invest, not to sacrifice, to invest. Second thing, it is very important to be very humble in the identification of the bottlenecks, the challenges, and the potential people that can feel menaced by the change. So the social aspect of the transformation is absolutely key, otherwise it is not going to work, because they will be fighting against something that probably could be beneficial for them, but for the short term it's a threat. And the third thing is that it is very important to identify the opportunities. No one is going to move just because there is a kind of Holy Spirit saying that we need to move, or because the things are so bad that you don't know how to cut the puzzle and take the small bites that can allow us to act. Panic is not a good idea either to mobilize the society. We need hope. We need a better understanding of how the small things can make a big change, and we need to understand how these positive small things can accelerate the transformation. And it is not an easy task, but I think that insisting and being to the extent possible smart, and to be smart is why it is important to count on direct dialogue and participation. Otherwise it is very difficult to be smart, but trying to identify all the opportunities and build around these opportunities is key. And my final comment, it is very important to get a great consensus on where we want to be. The time horizons do count, because if you only work on the very short term, the tensions and the inertias are going to be very strong. But if you foresee what you want to achieve, how to achieve it in the midterm, how to start mobilizing, and how to build on this mobilization is a little bit easier. And I think it is worth it. It is, as Mary was saying, standing up and fighting every single day. You don't know what is going to be the problem you are going to find that morning and that afternoon, and when you go to bed there are new challenges that you did not imagine. But I think it is very important to stay committed and to fight and to understand where the concerns of the people may be.
And especially now, because it really is hard times for a lot of people, you know, in their daily lives and struggling to just kind of get by. So at the same time, to have to think about, you know, tackling climate change is a heavy psychological burden for people as well. And Barbara, I'm just wondering, I mean, when I saw France was launching its campaign on the energy sobriety, which I'm not quite sure how to translate that into English, but energy efficiency, the one thing that kind of impressed me was that the first part of the video that I saw about it was the minister saying, well, actually, the government's going to do this, and then business, and then right at the end, it was like what individuals could do. And I thought, well, you know, quite often it's like individuals are told, well, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, but then they look at government and they go, well, and businesses, and they go, well, you know, they're not doing anything, or they're not doing the right thing, so how and why should I? But I think, you know, that did seem to me a little bit of a change in the way that it was being approached by the French government, to say, well, actually, we're going to start by turning off all our lights and trying to make these efficiency. Because energy efficiency is something that is, you know, we really should be doing a lot more on it. Oh, yes. And it's only now with the Ukraine crisis that it's come to the fore. So I don't know whether you could comment on that a little bit. How to set an example. How should governments set an example to the people?
Yes. First, I totally agree with Teresa. She's my friend, and we totally agree on what we have to do. Because the first thing before is to know, to be sure of what we want to do. Because when we are in charge of climate issues in a government, we have so many problems every day that if we don't know where we are going, we can change we can change the course of the history and go wrong. That's why it's very important to be aware and to be sure of what we want to do, and to be brave, because everybody thinks that what you are doing is not enough or too much. It's always that, not enough or too much. On these energy issues, when I was minister, it was one of my main preoccupations. I wanted to add in the energy policy this question of sobriety and how to talk about energy consumption, and how we can convince everybody to reduce the need of energy, of electricity. And it was very difficult because after Yellow Vest movement, my colleagues didn't want to talk about it because they didn't want to make people angrier. And because they didn't want to scare them. And it was very complicated for me. I had a plan, I had a sobriety plan, but they didn't want me to publish it. So we talked about nuclear power or energy, renewable energy, which is very important, and we are late on renewable energy. So we have to build more wind farms or solar panels, etc., etc. But on this issue of consumption, the occasion was, and it's sad to say that, but it was the Ukraine war. Because with the Ukraine war, in our face, we had the problem of an energy which we have to save. And people were ready to hear that. But it is very complicated because in France, but I think it's not only in France, people want to share the burden. They don't want to be the only one to do the effort. And it's very important to have to be a model and to say, okay, we, the government, we draw the story, we explain what we want to do, but you have to take your part. And nobody can be exempted. Everybody has to. Because when you tell people your heating is too high, you have to lower it. They say, okay, but why this this CEO take those planes to go? It was a scandal in France, a real scandal. And they are right. I think we have to say we are in the same boat, we are in the same trip, and if we do this together, it's a matter of cooperation. In France, we have a culture of confrontation. We have a culture of opposition. We have a culture, we disagree every time. We are on strike every time. And when some people of the majority say that the opposition say the opposite, but in France, we have to learn this cooperation. We have to learn that if we want to succeed, if we want to live, we need to change our culture. And I think it's the most important challenge we faced from every time. And
Absolutely.
It's very exciting.
It is. But I do think there needs to be more attention to the social side of how we get things done, really, among whole of societies, and not just here in this process, but equally, you know, we need both of those things. I hope we don't have a lot more time left, and I hope this has been a sort of a hopeful discussion, that we haven't dwelt too much on the negative stuff, because it's important for people to feel energized and optimistic to be able to get things done. So I just wanted to give everybody just a chance to kind of tell people in the audience, you know, what they feel they've kind of has been one of the important things that they're drawn out of this dialogue today, and a message that you would like to take back to the people that you hang out with and work with and play with and do things with at home. Pablo, I'm very aware that I haven't given you a second chance to respond to questions. So if you would like to respond to, you know, what you've heard, and then we'll just quickly go through everybody else for a quick last word.
Yes, don't worry. I think I prefer to listen to you more than speak. One of the most important things that is happening here is many youth people is writing to us to ask what we are here, if it has sense to be here. For us as youth activists, sometimes it's very difficult to be here. It's complex to explain the society why we are here. But this is a democratic space, an international space, multilateralism Spain. We have to be here. The thing is how we can translate to the social to our social civility movement what is happening here. So I think COPs need to be more democratic in the meanings, in the session meanings, because people only feel that it's super technical or super political, but they don't feel that this is useful for them. So I need all of you, all the social civility, all the politicians, institutions, to translate this message to social civility. Yes, I think that's more.
And what will you personally
Okay.
do when you...
Personally,
I'm
as
interested.
just person, I would like to talk more about mental health in COPs, because I didn't hear a lot about mental health, and many youth people wake up every morning with depression, with anxiety about climate issues. So please, we need to talk more about this. We need to implement more public health system to help that youth people.
I totally agree with you. I think it's a real missing aspect because it does have a huge impact on people. And we all probably know somebody in our lives who's really struggling with the issue of climate change and what to do about it. Okay, Lara, how about you? What's your takeaway from the discussion today?
Today, I want to give importance to the thing that we are mostly women, empowered women. We have been fighting for such a long time to have spaces like this, to have an important role in society. And we have been talking about it, that the environment is related to social, human rights, children rights, youth rights. It is a right crisis also. And I want to reivindicate our rights as young people, as young women, empowering and wanting to have a voice into this climate crisis, because it's our future and we don't want to delay any action. We want to take action right now, and that's it.
Thank you. And Mary, how about you?
I think I'll just remember that Nisreen wasn't happy with the setup when she came here, and she was strong enough in herself and as a young person to say, we're going to change all this, and she made us all move around. That's what young people need to do. Not accept the situation that you find yourselves in, and take the step to change it. And you were right, Nisreen, because we've had a much better conversation because we've been kind of mixed up like this. Yeah, that's important. That's the message, I think, to young people. Don't accept the status quo. Change it in the way Nisreen did, and change it as much as possible. I love the fact that you were part of a citizens' assembly, because my country had the experience where it was the citizens' assembly that really moved Ireland on climate. We wouldn't have moved, the parliament wouldn't have moved with that citizens' assembly. So, and now we have a children and youth citizens' assembly that has been discussing biodiversity.
Oh,
You
great.
know, yeah.
Okay, that's the next big
Next step,
subject,
yeah.
I hope, absolutely. Thank you very much, Mary. And I just would like to say, Nisreen, you're braver than me, because I thought that it wasn't great to have all the young people on one side and all the slightly older people on the other side, but I didn't have the courage to change it. You did. Okay, thank you. So how do you feel about the discussion that we've had today? I think that it's been great to be able to have this exchange of views.
Yes, I think we got a lot of courage to do things when we don't have bullets to the mic. I just want to say the last thing from here is, as young people, we always stigmatize the governments and the policymakers and the decision makers, saying they are not doing enough, and maybe they are not. But they are also having and facing real challenges that we listen to in this panel. And also a lot of governments, a lot of policymakers and decision makers stigmatize young people by being troublemakers, by being people who like only to strike outside. Both stigmas are not true. This is just a perception that we have among each other, and it's delaying us very much. It's really time to have such a unique exchange setting like this, where young people meet with governments and head of states and say, yes, we know that you are not doing enough,
you have challenges, we can help you to address these challenges. For example, I am sure if the young French people, for example, talk to the other generation about the importance of taxation of the fossil fuel, if the young generation helped bridging the gaps, for example, where maybe the poorer population don't have access to public transportation, we could have by far more homogeneous community and homogeneous movement. So my message is it's high time to stop stigmatizing others and having perceptions on others and work together, because if anything happened to this planet, all of humanity will be not there. There will not be countries or governments to rule anything. There will not be humanity in the first place. So let's work together, young people, governments, head of states, whatever, to actually make it happen, because we are running out of time. As Mary mentioned, it's high time for all of us to work together. Thank you.
Absolutely, and I hope we are working together today. It definitely feels like it, a space where we can exchange views without feeling there's some kind of hierarchy. You know, even though in theory there is, but it doesn't feel like it today. Barbara, just briefly, if that's okay.
Yes, it's very important what you said, and I already say that, but I think we cannot win if we don't cooperate. And the second thing I wanted to say, it's, for me, the most important is to say the climate change is not a business for technicians, for scientists, for specialists. We are all concerned, and we have our word to say, and it is not it is as important and most important than their words. I remember when I made a survey on nuclear issues, nuclear security, when I was a member of parliament 4 years ago. When I published the survey, there was proposals, but the people, the producer of power energy, they didn't answer to the proposals. The proposal didn't fit them. And they say, okay, we don't want to answer to that. We want just to prove that you are not able to talk about it. And it was terrible, because it was completely the symbol of what I'm fighting against since 20 years. And I'm very happy to see here so many people, non-specialists, but just citizens of the world. We are citizens of the world. We have our word to say, and we have our at each place we have our role to play.
Absolutely, and I think in some way we're all experts on climate change, because we're all experiencing it in our daily lives. It's just that we have different experiences, but I think young people of today are going to just know so much better about how to deal with these issues than say my generation. Nicole, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's clear enough that we are not just passive victims of the climate crisis, the young people, but also part of the solution. And we need to make sure that young people are not only here, but also make sure that every delegation of every country has at least one youth delegate that can be part of the delegation and have a real voice in the delegation. And I think it's important to work on that. We are working in Latin America to make sure that that happens for next year, at least, I hope next year. And also to make sure that we work together, because I agree that without cooperation, we can't solve the climate crisis. And we need you, and you need us. So I think it's really important to work together.
Excellent. And Teresa, thank you to Spain for enabling this conversation to take place, because I feel a whole lot better after listening to this than poring over a text on whether it's operational mechanism under the financial blah, blah, blah of the UNFCCC for loss and damage. But would you like to just give us a few closing words? Thanks.
Oh, thanks. It is quite refreshing. It's much better than this wording exercise, drafting exercise that you were commenting. Yes. A couple of comments. First, this is not an either-or. I think that this is a cumulative list of very interesting comments that we can all support. I like it to learn the way you were introduced into this discussion, so understanding on an 8th of March that there are good reasons what to fight for. And I was impressed by the fact that you could not come back to your country after this speech in Glasgow. And this makes me think that we cannot take our rights for granted. We need to exercise and build on our rights. Our freedom of speech and expression, so to learn to other colleagues and other friends why this matters. The freedom and the right to be educated, so to learn more and to be effective contesting those who are pretending to know, but in fact they are fighting against this action. A right to vote, this is very important. We should not be allowing proposals that are denying that this is a real problem. And of course, a right to cooperate and to work together in this exercise. And I think that this is very, very important, exercising citizenship of the whole world and of course in our own demands, because it's true that there are people who cannot exercise the full list of rights that in many other countries we enjoy, and we are not sufficiently aware of the importance of being in a position to enjoy the access to the rights.
Absolutely, and at the demonstration in the middle weekend, one of the things that people were saying was no climate justice without human rights, and that's for everybody. So I think we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for coming, and I hope you enjoyed it. I certainly did. Thanks to all our panelists. They were great.
Okay. Well done, Megan.